Steve Aoki, bro.
You know what's crazy about Aoki? And I'm sorry, we'll get into an actual conversation in a second. But the craziest thing to me about Aoki, after all the in your face stuff, is just his aim is so good. He's the best at throwing things accurately of anybody I've maybe ever met.
And that is the reason why Willy Joy is the kindest and most loving and the way he sees the world is just, he sees it through rose-colored glasses. That is a beautiful thing to say.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe
a beautiful observation.
I was just never good at sports when I was a kid, and I watch him do that. I'm like, man, you could have been a pitcher, man. Oh man. Well, how are you? First of all, it's nice to see you.
It's great to see you too. I'm pretty good, I guess. I mean, it's still such a disorientating moment for me. So I'm still feeling that. But I am healthy. I am good. I am laughing every day and making stuff that I love. So that's good.
Oh, well, that's beautiful, actually. All of that sounds incredible. And I mean, you guys are still locked down there as well, right?
We are not locked down anymore officially, but Omicron, is it Omicron?
Yeah, I think
that
right.
Old buddy is absolutely ripping right now. And I fear that Christmas is going to be a little bit touch and go. But at the same time, the big holdup, a lot has been said about Australia becoming some kind of crazy jail. So I should address that as the spokesperson for Australia.
Which you are, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're now vaccinated. The problem is that we didn't have any vaccines to give the people. So the holdup was, okay, everyone stay in your houses and wait because we will have vaccines soon. And rather than this thing get out of control, let's just all chill it out, which pretty much worked up to this point. We were seeing really low numbers.
Right.
But yeah, Omicron's definitely having good old rip.
Oh, yeah. Was that part of it, was being locked down and wanting some connection and some re-inspiration part of starting the podcast?
Yeah, for sure. Just feeling connected to who I am and how I feel good and the ways that I feel in flow and the ways that I feel connected to other people. It's easy when you're locked in a house with a couple of kids and nothing that really reminds you of your old world or, it's just really isolating. So just to reconnect with that and base myself in a strong place, I really wanted to do it. And it was also just something that naturally kept appearing as part of my skill set. I do interviews every week with different artists for my radio show, and the interviews just always blew way over time because we would start really talking about what went behind those songs and all the ways all the overcomings that had to take place in order to get that song out. And it just became very necessary to work out a platform to give these stories because I know as a young creator, back when I was a young creator, now I'm a slightly older and middle-aged creator,
right.
But no one really tells you their struggles as honestly as they could. And when you hear the honest struggles behind your favorite artist, it gives you a lot of context into what you may be going through yourself and the challenges you may be facing, which I think is really helpful. So I just honestly feel like we all need a bit of help right now. And this is a way I can help some people that need it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and myself at the same time.
Of course. I mean, that's the secret.
Those people. Me.
Yeah, AKA
I
me.
Needed to help.
I mean, that's. I tell people that all the time. That's the secret of me doing this podcast. Is it's just free therapy for me. Yeah. like it does. I'm grateful that people seem to like it and that it provides something and breaks down these myths of celebrity and success and all that. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's so helpful for me. It's hard to imagine for me, still kind of being creative in the way I am and the way I like to be without now having these conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's connection. It's literally the ability for someone to hear you validate your experiences, you know, and add to them and to teach you something new. I mean, that is the core basis of all interaction that we have in this life, and everything that we need in order to create anything with any confidence. We need to understand that people can hear us and that we can be heard and we can hear others. So
yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, in doing this, obviously you've been talking to people, interviewing people for a large chunk of your professional life already. But in doing the podcast, the longer format, focusing more on, you know, the podcast is Create, Destroy, focusing on creativity and people's journey to creativity. Have you been surprised by anything? Have you learned anything? Does it feel different from the way you were talking to people in the past?
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten to know my friends and the people that I've talked to a lot more on a level that perhaps I hadn't gotten to before, a little bit more about their backstory. I think when I'm in a studio session or when I connect deeply with another artist, we talk a lot about our struggles at that time. But what I got to with this podcast is why we are the people we are and the challenges that we overcame, or that all the experiences we had as children or as young adults that got us to that first step. You know, that's what's been really cool. Like the Boys Noise episode and talking to him about his family life and his big brother, and his big brother was a DJ, but his parents were really strict with him. And then just all these funny dynamics that I wasn't aware of and actually really similar to my own. So I was like, oh my God, me too. Like I'm the youngest, like 15 years younger than my brothers and sisters. I had no idea that you had a brother who was 15 years older than you too. And like how much they influence your music taste, you know, like,
yeah.
It's so interesting how it's played out.
Yeah, it's fascinating to find out, because I think just from a fan perspective, we're used to the artists we look up to and idolize as kind of being these fully formed beings, right?
Yeah.
Who just sort of arrive fully formed, and there's an image, and that's just what it is. And I think for somebody just starting off, it can be so hard to figure out, well, how do I become this like godlike being, you know? Because all you really see are these godlike beings walking around without really any roadmap to get to where they are. I don't know. I like that part of it a lot. The podcast is great, by the way. I've been listening. It's really good.
Thank you, Willy. I mean, it's just so cool to have someone like you so close to me that I called you before I did the podcast and asked your advice, and you helped me. And I love your podcast, and you're an incredible interviewer. And I was so warmed by your support of you were my first review on Apple Music podcast app, which is I just saw it and my heart got warm. I was like, fuck, Willy's the best.
No, you're the best. For people who are already plugged into it, already checking it out, what's the plan going forward? Because when I talked to you when you were just starting it, it was kind of like, well, let's just do this. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how I feel about it. Now that you're in it, do you envision more seasons? Do you envision expanding it?
Yeah, I do envisage that. I'm also limited because it definitely took up more time than I was expecting to finish off the episodes. And I am limited because I also have touring coming back into my life,
right.
Hopefully. So my patterns and everything for next year are still taking place because I'm really project based. I like to see, if I see a window where I've got 3 months where I feel like I can take on something, I'll grab it. And so now I'm just waiting for that 3 months to schedule out next year and work out where that 3 months might be. So that's sort of where it's at. But I envisage there being more. I want to make sure that I'm building on the stories that I'm telling and making sure that I'm hitting a diverse group of people who have different stories to tell. So once I feel like I had to have a headspace window for that, I will hopefully take it on. But even if life gets out of control and for some sad reason I don't get to come back to it a lot, I'm really a I'm a fighter for done is better than perfect, and it's better to start something and just do it and have it exist, even if I can't keep it going for 20 years. I'm glad that I've done it, even if it's just this season, which I don't think it is, but even if it is just that, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, done is better than perfect is such a good. I've been talking to people about that a lot lately. I was just talking to Claude Von Stroke, and he was saying that he has all these problems with finishing songs and perfectionism, and that it's something, even at this point in his career, he feels like he still doesn't have a handle on. And to hear him say that, a guy who I consider to be so prolific, and he's putting out music and he's running a label and he's throwing event, and doing all these things, and him saying, I just focus too much on certain tasks and can't get everything done. It never really ends. It's kind of a crazy thing.
Time management is the whole challenge now. And I've got 2 kids, and I've got the radio show going and making music and things that I want to achieve with that. So we just do the best we can every day. And I absolutely tank at it a lot, but I keep trying. I mean, this morning we were supposed to start this about 45 minutes, an hour ago, and I pushed it back for one reason, and then another reason came up, like just trying to hold space for so many different things in your life.
Yeah.
You just do your best.
Well, can we talk about, since your podcast is about creativity and now we're talking about time management, another thing I've been talking to people about lately is the idea of how are we able to schedule creativity into our lives when we're very busy and we do creative work, which doesn't really work well on a schedule. How have you found, juggling everything that you do when it's time for you to sit down and write a song? Is there anything you do to make yourself more creative, open to that?
Yes. I have a few tricks or a few mental things that I do. I make sure any urgent logistics are out of the way. So I read this thing that's like 25-minute increments are the best focus time. And you should take a 5-minute break after every 25-minute work sesh. But for that 25 minutes, you shouldn't even get up to get a glass of water. Like, you focus hard for 25. So what I do usually is get my kids out of the house by hopefully about 8, 9. It's always a bit tricky. There's no real guarantee on that. The first thing I'm going to do is exercise and like dust off the dust of like being a mum and my mum voice. And then I'm going to try and recover a sense of self. So I'm going to exercise or get my body physical or shake off what I need to shake off. And then I'm going to make a really strong goal list for the day. So it's going to be based around one main task, creative task. So it's like, okay, today I need to crack the bass line on this song. Nothing's going anywhere until I crack the bass line of this song. And I think the trick is just having that one goal for the day instead of, and being quite specific about what that goal is. If you're at a different stage of the writing and it's like, okay, today it's all about exploration. So I'm just going to write demo after demo. I'm just going to have fun. So this morning, to get in the mood, I'm going to go for a long walk and I'm going to have a really big breakfast or a juice and a coffee and just get straight to it. And I'm going to write 2-hour demos all day. That's another way that I work. Another thing that I do in between those things, so let's just say, then I get to my email, make sure there's no urgent logistics. I give myself 25 minutes to go through the emails. Whatever doesn't get answered that day. Yeah. I can come back to it. It'll live. And then I burn stuff in my room. So I like to burn Palo Santo or burn incense. And for me, the smell of Palo Santo or incense completely shifts my headspace. I don't know why. But, then it's just shaking off whatever sort of crap you're holding from a shitty email you got or a weird interaction you had, and just thinking about the task at hand and why it's important. And it's like, okay, well, I've got to get this bass done today because this is holding up the release schedule for my EP. I need to go to mixing now. So it's really important this gets done today. I'm going to give myself 3 25-minute stretches to get it done. So I draw 3 little circles on my paper. I always have a piece of paper next to my desk. I draw 3 little circles and I simply do the work. And this is where there's a very unsexy side of creativity, and that is turning up and fucking doing the work that you don't want to do, because no one else is going to make you do it but you. You
That's
actually
right.
have to get, and it's like, yes, but you know what? If after those three attempts, I don't get anything that I like, I don't feel bad about it. I go, okay, that's all I had today. I'll come back to it. And often after those 3 attempts, I don't really know if it's good. I'll be like, okay, that's done. I'm just going to put that aside for today, and I'm going to come back to it tomorrow and see if I like it. So now I'm going to finish off the drum mix on this, or I'm going to whatever, some other little task that I also need to do. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and check on that bass. And if I come back tomorrow and I like what I hear, then it's, okay, get the bass sound right, get the da-da-da-da-da, do something with it, or it's let's try again. So that's pretty much my way of approaching creativity, where it's like, if you turn up and you're able to spend the time that you allocate on it and you're happy with it, then that's successful.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things in what you just said. One, that is maybe the most organized way I've ever heard anyone talk about how they sit down to write a song. You have, well, actually, I'm sure you do have some idea of I talk to so many people where they're just like, I don't have any process. I wake up, I roll over, I walk into the studio. You just see what happens.
The thing is, though, I don't know that they don't have a process, Willie. I think that they just haven't thought about it as much as I have. I just think that they have a routine that they're into, but I ask people this question as well. So I know that you want a clear answer, and I'm trying to give you my honest answer.
Oh, and I love the answer, yeah.
Of how it can be that you can be that strict about it. And actually, even if people can't give you that answer, I guarantee you they have some kind of rhythm of their own. If it's anyone who's been working in the industry for a long time or has been producing for a long time, they know what gets them there. Yeah. They might not be able to verbalize it, or they don't want to seem like they try that hard, but I guarantee you they have to have that kind of deliverability. They need to have accountability. I mean, we have the rare people who often from, times past, who have no accountability to anyone and just come out with a song every 10 years and it's so amazing that everyone just buckles to their whims. Yeah. But I think that most the hardcore producers who are coming out with new work regularly, or even just that come out with really high quality work, they have that kind of discipline. Discipline is a huge part of creativity, whether people want to admit it or not. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely the rare ghosts or the rare, what's the right word? Not ghosts. The rare
unicorns.
Unicorns was my word I was looking for. Thank you, Willie. The rare unicorns who just fly by the seat of their pants, and that is wonderful. And I love that for them.
Great. Yeah,
love that for them. But it's not what the life that I live, and I have a lot of people who count on me for things.
Yeah, I mean, all of that makes sense. And what I'm taking from what you're saying is that regardless of anybody's process, to make it, especially in the long term, you do have to be strict with yourself in a sense, in that you have to show up all the time.
Yeah, when you don't want to sometimes. Even if, like, something Michael Brun said, which I think is so good, is doing it daily. So his thing was like, even if I'm in a really shit mood, I'm going to commit to doing one thing. Even if it's just getting out whatever it is, even if it's one snare, and I just load up some fun snare pattern and play around with some tuning, and then I decide that I don't want to today. Yeah. I'm going to commit to turning up even if it's just that one thing, and it's a numbers game. And I know that if I turn up every day and I just put that one thing down, I know I'm going to end up somewhere. And that's it. It's just building on the story. It's putting one foot in front of the other every day, because the idea that one session or one song or one anything is going to change your life is a little bit too hard to, too much pressure for a creator. Like, it's going to fizz you out. It's going to make you overthink the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. The other thing you said that I liked is that you'll, take the 3 25-minute stabs at whatever the task is, and then just put it down and come back to it later, which I think that's something I don't know if enough people do, which is really not trying to judge your creativity in the moment.
Yeah.
And kind of just trusting that, you've made good songs in the past and you have the ability to make good songs in the future. And rather than sit there, because it's funny how we never have perspective in the moment on how good or bad something is, right? And coming back to it later, I think I've been trying to do that a lot more. It's just make a bunch of stuff, don't listen to it for a while, come back. And when you come back, it's so obvious what's good and what's not and what needs to be done.
It's so interesting. The time just lets it marinate and you come back with fresh ears and suddenly you know what you need to do. That's such a big thing. And I don't know, I guess it's just something that you learn over time where you can sit there all day umming and ahhing about it and unsure because you're too in it at that point. You're too much connected to it's like, I consider it like when I'm in that first day, when I'm just writing that, I'm thinking too nuanced about where the bass notes are placed, what instrument, like I'm just too in it to understand if it's any good or not. It really does need the time to come back to it and hear it without being so connected to the inside of that sound. I'm now seeing it from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the analytical mind versus the creative mind, and they can't always sort of coexist.
Yeah,
which is
totally.
bizarre and interesting and fascinating. But what does your songwriting process look like these days? Do you have, outside of the creativity part of it, do you start with a melody? Do you start with a bass line? Do you start with a lyric? Is there any kind of process for that?
Every different way seems to be what goes on. Usually what happens is I write lots of demos. I go through a stage where I'll write a bunch of demos and I'll do a couple of days alone, just doing 2 hours a day. And then maybe I will have squeezed in a song somewhat. Sometimes I get asked to do songwriting sessions with other songwriters. And I like to do that because it's like throwing a spanner in the works a bit. So I like to do that and we'll do the same thing. Just like usually it's a 2-hour session and we'll try and do a song every half hour. So it's just dragging in a couple of sounds, playing a quick bass line, writing a quick melody, writing a quick vocal idea, moving on to the next thing. And then I'll just store up these little ideas in a folder. And then when I'm looking to work on something, I'll usually want to go back to some specific ones. And then it could be anything from them that I need to fix. And that's the jump off point to the song. So it might be like, this bass line's great, vocal sucks, need to redo the vocal. Or, this vocal's great, need to rebuild the track. So it depends on what's gone on in that first session and what needs to be then created around.
How do you feel, since you've had all this home time, studio time to do the podcast, talk to people, how does it feel now that touring is back on the horizon?
It's so exciting and also really anxiety making for me because it's been so long and because I know what I love, but I also am informed of like in my life, until COVID, I DJ'd every week for my whole like adult life.
Yeah.
So I had so much context around the songs that I was playing. I had such each song represented a layer of its reactions. So it's like, I know that this song does this to this audience, this to this audience, this to this audience.
Yeah.
I also know different audiences. So I know that this kind of audience will probably like these songs. So it's each song is like part of a picture.
Yeah.
And right now I have the center part of the picture and not the rest of the picture for each song. And that's how I think about DJing in a way.
Fascinating, yeah.
Sometimes that's how I think about it. The other side of it, I go through stages where I spend a lot of time listening to new music during this time. I mean, every week I listen to everything because of my radio show, but I go through specific times where I'm really listening to a lot of mixes and I'm feeling really connected to electronic music and dying to play again and really just want to play for me. Like, oh my God, I just want to play these loud. I know people will love it and I will love it and it will be great. But going back into it, I have those feelings. And then I also have anxiety about being on the road away from my kids during COVID. That's a whole thing about like the logistics of getting stuck somewhere away from my kids, which is the reason why I haven't been able to tour since then, because it hasn't been possible for me to do that safely. And Yeah, it's starting to have been quite a long time. So of course on my little weekdays, I have days where I'm like, do I still know how?
Right, of course.
And then
course.
then I have a strong day where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to rip it so hard when I next get out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all the things.
For sure. There's no question in my mind that of course you're going to rip it. But it's interesting to think about the idea of, the idea of feeling connected to it, right? Where you're like, oh, these songs, I can't wait to play them. I already can see what it's going to look like when I do. Mm-hmm. It's going to feel so good. It is weird now because, I mean, I've played a few gigs since COVID and they're great, but it does, I don't know. I feel like I'm still finding my way back to feeling fully connected to 2021, I guess almost 2022 dance music right now. Like, where do you see yourself? I was wondering this when I knew we were coming to talk. Where do you see yourself fitting into the overall dance landscape these days?
I mean, no.
Yeah, right?
I have no idea. I've been out of it. Like I haven't been in it. So I have no idea. And even that question was complicated even when I was in it, to be honest, because I've always found myself a part of everything and also not flying the flag for any one thing specifically, which is by design. I don't feel that way. Like I genuinely don't feel like I am planting my little flag in this genre because this is me.
Yeah.
Dance music to me is like energy and what feels interesting and what I'm attracted to and what feels like inspiring to me at the time. And it can be any genre and anything. So it's always, and it's, there's definitely some old favorites that stay there, some consistencies. And there's an energy that's a consistency with me. But where I will be seen to fit by other people has never been in my control and has never been something I can particularly understand. So we'll see.
Well, is there a part of what you do that you look at as like the primary part? Is there a part of what you do that's like the most fun or the most exciting, whether it's DJing, whether it's producing, whether it's radio, whether it's touring?
The thing is that for me, performing as a DJ and like being able to deliver my own energy as a DJ has always been the kind of catalyst for all the other things to exist.
Me too, 100%.
So that, because we come from a time, I think, where you could have been a DJ and not made music, 10 years ago or whatever. It wasn't so much of as you could have quite a big name as a DJ and not release regularly or just release bootlegs and DJ tools. So yeah, that was what everything was built around initially, and now that piece of the painting got taken away, and I've made the other pieces a lot stronger. And now I guess we'll see the re-entry of that first idea, and we'll see where it fits. But I know that I always surprise myself with this stuff, so we'll see.
Well, all the new music's been great. Ice Cream, I really loved that track.
My release schedule has been so more erratic and ridiculous than ever, in the sense that like I've only really released 2 songs during lockdown, mostly because I'm holding out now because I know I'll be able to tour next year. But it's really funny. Like Backseat and Ice Cream, so different. I have nothing to say about it. They're just the 2 songs that happened to finish at that time. But I will say that the next whole bunch of stuff is sort of definitely more in line with some kind of direction, and that should start rolling out. There was supposed to be one in this month. There was supposed to be one earlier this month, but we were waiting on a vocal to come back, blah, 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 blah. Some paperwork stuff. So, and also I've not been able to play. So it just, I would have been so sad to not be able to play the music that I'd been making.
Yeah.
For me, that would have been really frustrating. So I just held off.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, I did the exact same thing. You put out 2 more songs than I did during lockdown.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's understandable. It's definitely like a big part of the release,
Yeah, it's a big part of it. And I think right when lockdown first started, I was talking to a ton of people about this, where all of a sudden it's like, well, what am I making this music for if I can't play it? Like, this is dance music. We're supposed to like get out and dance to it. And it was a very weird moment.
Certainly aggressive music was hard to get your head around at that time for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Just to make it was like, I've got enough aggressive vibes in my life. Like I don't really want to spend my day listening to that sore fucking synth.
Well, what do you, since you do your radio show, Apple Music show, and like you said, you're always listening to music the same way I am, to just go through promos just to get the content, the mixes out there. What do you listen to when you're not doing that? Do you listen to anything?
So my husband is like the best music curator. He's actually unbelievable and so much better than me at curating play. Well, he's putting a lot more time in to me on other genres. So I'm just listening to what we listen to in the house, which luckily is really diverse and it's just everything. He just makes great playlists. So I just listen to that in all kind of relaxation times. And actually when he's not around and I need music, I struggle to remember what I used to listen to relax for myself, because I haven't had to make that choice for such a long time.
It's kind of amazing to have it served up for you, though.
Yes, it's served up. It's totally served up. I'm really spoiled. And it allows me to just fully concentrate on my job, with electronic music being my job and passion.
Right.
So it's kind of good, but I'm passionate about all different music as well. And sometimes I'll read books about different genres. And I try not to do it, because it enormously confuses my writing, because I do too much weird stuff and I need to just like I've got enough on my plate. I don't need to, like, I've wanted to start like a kind of Tom Tom Club side project for such a long time, and I've written so many songs for it and I don't have the bandwidth for it. I cannot do it right now. So I will just stop myself from thinking about it. So it confuses me.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. I mean, have you in the past, I feel like I was going through some of your older discography earlier today, and the songs range, stylistically, a bunch of different directions. Was there a point where you felt like it was not too unfocused, but was there a point where...
Yes.
Okay, fair
I still think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because I love DJing and I get carried away. So I just go like, oh, this song would be so fun to play. Let's make it like this. We'll make it this mental thing. Or like, if I'm doing a collaboration with someone, it's such a fun thing to do, to create a DJ tool. And so I do it. And then it sort of defines me somehow a lot, or like people want it to define you in a bit more. So I sort of realized that maybe around 2016 or 17 that I needed to be a little bit more directional, so that I can still play other stuff, but when it comes to my releases, they need to be a little bit less difficult, a little bit less confusing for people to realize what they might expect from me.
Which makes total sense. And, I think that's just good branding and marketing and all of that. And yeah, maybe a side project can be a good outlet for that. But it's also, I don't know, I feel a kinship with you, because I'm similar in that way. In that, it's like a terminal case of DJ brain. Where
it's really, and just like, I love them. I love them all these different types of music. I really love them, and I see the spirit and I see the joy in them. And yeah, it's just that simple, really. But I also am happy just to be doing this now, and I'm happy to experiment in a more sort of streamlined way. And I like working alone a lot more, because I'm limited by sonically what I can create, instead of if I'm working with someone else, I kind of push into new areas because they have different skill set to me and we can do that. Right. And now I'm really happy with my skill set being limited and being like, okay, here are my limitations and this is what I have to work around. And it makes it a lot simpler for me to move forward. And I think that if things were more consistent for me in terms of like my life wasn't so affected by this pandemic, perhaps things like in 2019, I got to be quite consistent and release the EP, and I was definitely on my way to continuing that. And it feels like I had a baby as well at the end of 2019, early 2020, right, which definitely disrupted things. But my plan was to stay that way. But then the pandemic hit and I couldn't tour, so I stopped. But I hope to get to a place where it's just, I have my world that I've built and I can can consistently be a part of that and play around with that, what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And find that success and happiness on your own terms, right? Like I feel I'm speaking more for myself now, but you tell me if you agree. I felt like one thing the pandemic did give me was the ability to kind of realize that some of what I had been chasing before, I was like, actually, that might be somebody else's goal I was chasing, you know? And maybe that's not exactly the goal that's going to make me the happiest.
Yeah, totally. Or what about my life is something that I will fight back for? And what was I hoping to do that I don't really mind that I don't have to do anymore or that I can't do anymore? There was a lot of that thinking going on. What would I fight for even if I couldn't do it in front of anyone else?
What was it? What did you land on?
So basically, I got back to Australia and the world just seemed so closed. And the possibility of being able to do what I did seemed really, really distant. And I also thought, like, is this when I had these narratives, like, is this my story sort of ending in that part? Is it time for me to move on? Is it time for me to do something else? Like, when you have those different thoughts in your head.
Yeah, of course.
And I really thought, okay, let's talk about it. Let's explore it. I wrote down a whole list of other things that I might like to do. Thought about them. Some ideas I spent all night writing stuff about. Like I really explored them and let myself do that because I knew that, this was the time. This was the time to take a big, deep breath because the years before the pandemic hit were so crazy. I mean, I had 2 children in 2 years. I had nonstop touring, the radio, all the other commitments I was on. So like I hadn't fully taken a moment to work out where I was at mentally. And doing that, it was like, okay, well, what if, do you want to spend the next 6 months making music when you might not be able to DJ anymore? Like, do you want to do that?
Right.
And it was like, yes. So that was really nice to let it all go and still decide to do it, even if it meant that I wouldn't be able to be a part of it. But the thing was, then I was booked to go to America in October and then Delta hit and there was the other lockdown. So I was supposed to be back in the game in October this year and then that had to be cancelled. And we went into a 3 or 4 month lockdown here from like June. I forget now. June to the end of October was locked, to November, the beginning of November. So for that just like stopped me again.
Of course.
And then now so I stopped. So that's why I did the podcast. Like as soon as I realized, okay, I don't need to finish these songs and get them out because I'm not going to be able to tour them. So let's do the podcast now, which has been on my to-do list. And I was like, okay, here's my window. And then I will be able to finish the songs, which I'm doing now, and then let them free. And then I also can get out and see what happens when I play them, which would be really cool.
Obviously, as you just illustrated, we can't predict what's going to happen, but do you envision moving back to the States? Do you think you're going to be in Australia for the long term?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Australia, being around my family with my kids is really essential and amazing. We'll just have to wait and see how things go.
Well, yeah, I forget who I was talking to now, but somebody else out in Australia, and we got to talking about how in some ways they thought the pandemic had maybe been a boon to the local scene in Australia in the sense that everything started focusing on, well, who's physically here, who's, who can drive an hour to play a single show before it gets locked down again, that kind of thing.
Probably Emo. Did you talk to Emo?
Not recently, no, although I'd love to talk to him. It's been a minute, but I'm trying to remember who it was now. But I was just going to ask for you, have you seen any of that? And do you keep tabs on what's going on with the local scene in Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not fully aware of the local dynamics, but I've gone out to a couple of events and as has always been the case, Australia is so chock-a-block full of DJs, like really, really, really good DJs.
Yeah.
It's a really good breeding ground. And unfortunately, there aren't a huge amount of opportunities for gigs, especially now. But like just in terms of the States being so big, there's so many more big festivals, and Australia has a different demographic challenge. And yeah, it's hard. Like the local DJs here will kick your ass, basically. They're so good. And so they should be like a lot of them, you know, and I was a bit of a local gun myself here for a long time before I went to America, and I know that life, and you work really hard and you have a cool little list of gigs that you do, and it's great, but it's hard because there's a bit of a flaw or a cap on what you can do locally, or at least there used to be. But you're seeing amazing talent coming out of Australia. Like I'm such a fan of some of the local talent, and I'm sure that I'm unaware if they're waiting to go overseas. You know, I've been here during the pandemic, so I don't know. Like a lot of them, I think, will have really big careers in Europe. Like Skin on Skin's amazing. He's one of my favorite Australian artists, and he's you know selling out shows all around Australia and doing great, cool stuff. And if he must have a huge following in Europe. I mean, it's only a matter of time till he translates over there, and hopefully America too. But there's heaps of great local DJs, and a lot of them are that thing that we talked about before, where they don't make music specifically to. They're just amazing DJs. Yeah. And like a lot of that, like when I'm thinking about opportunities I want to do now here, like I don't want to do any of that. I want to let them do all that, because that's their place and they deserve to do it. And that I'm so happy for them to crush those worlds and for me to not be a part of that anymore, because I've already done that. That's been my path, and I'm ready to move through that.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever get nostalgic? I think we were talking a little bit about, you know, your come up and when it was, you know, you and Nina and Emo and running around like King's Cross and, you know, playing your regular nights and all that. Is there any part of that scene which sounded like such a tight-knit scene, such a moment? Is there any of that you miss? Any element of that that's not around these days?
Yeah, but it's like missing the past. It's like you can't miss the past. I don't let myself do it. I don't like that was such a special time for us just because we were young and we found a world that we could thrive in. And we found this Narnia where we could play and like discover things about ourselves and discover our talents. And I love it for that. But it's not coming back, and I don't compare what is now to what was then at all. Nostalgia is a tricky little thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in a way, I feel like we are always chasing it in terms of what we create. Like to me, like I was listening to a lot of your tunes today, and a lot of it struck me not necessarily as nostalgic music, but it was music that it felt like music that the 16-year-old you or me would have loved. Like it felt like you were making music for like the younger version of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's like an innocence and a joy to the songs. There's not there's definitely that element. That's part of it.
I don't know. Nostalgia and missing the past and all that. It's a weird thing because I get stuck in it sometimes, but I also think that it is sort of necessary to try to keep connected to those feelings in a certain sense as like an anchor for what we do.
But don't you think as well, like just when time is so slippery, music is so nostalgic. Have you heard what's big now? It's just like remade old songs and then like heaps of 90s rave stuff or, you know, breaks and stuff, all these break loops that the kids are putting in these new tunes, they're like 100 years old. It would be in a million other songs. It's what is time? All I think about is spirit. So I just think about the songs being guided by a good, clean energy and like a good, just like coming from a pure place and whoever's making it and sounding as fresh as it can even if it's got a lot of retro sounds or nostalgic sounds. you can make it sound fresh in the way that you approach those sounds and in the way that you deliver it. That's where the freshness comes in, even though the sounds and the what's being delivered as new still is so referenced and old.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think
I just still feel so like time is a construct and like I can't define it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we're going to time as a construct, do you look at what we do in a spiritual sense at all? Are you a spiritual person in general?
Yeah, I think that's my main thing. I think that the thing that drives everything I do is the energy of it.
Yeah.
That's why I like people. That's why I connect with the people I connect with, because it's an energetic thing. And there's people who my problem has been like, I never was driven to make friends in this industry or any other industry based on like, oh, this person's the big, like I see that kind of ladder climbing. And it's like, if I sit down with you and I have a fucking great time and I feel like we have a good energy, that's where the connection will come from. And I'll never like, that's it. That's what drives me. If I play an event, a gig, whatever, and that I can feel that energy transference between me and what the crowd, I feel really good about that. If I can feel a really weird vibe from the crowd, I don't really want to go back there.
Yeah. You know? And that's a thing too, right? You could have, I've had this happen a bunch of times where you have what maybe if you were just watching a video of the set with the sound off, it would look like it's going really well. And then you get off stage and someone's like, hey, how'd it go? Great set. And you're like, didn't like that one, you know?
Yeah.
It can be so weird. You're absolutely right. Because the energy, and this is the same thing with music. This is the same thing with creativity. I like that we're kind of coming back to this is you just know. You just feel it. If somebody's giving you a bad vibe and you're just like, I don't really want to hang around this person, you can't always say why. The same way you can't always say why you chose these 3 notes for your bass line instead of some other 3 notes, right? But it is that kind of you just know. It is some kind of energy. Maybe it's the connection to that kind of energy that makes somebody, a more fully fledged artist, is being able to connect to that more quickly or more deeply. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think that there's 2 types of artists. I think there's artists that, well, if you could simplify it so much, like I think that's definitely true. I think there's people who are really good. I feel like there's people that come from their guts and there's people that come from their heads.
Yeah.
And some people are really good at seeing what is working and what and they're really tactical and talented. And then there's people who are pure guts or like pure instinct and talented. It's like it can come from both places, because you see a lot of successful people in the electronic space, in all industries, I'm quite sure. They're actually super tactical, I think. And then there's people who are more driven by something that they feel deeply from their gut.
Yeah, I think that's right. Which one are you?
Don't know.
That's probably
good. I don't know who I am. I don't know. I don't think it's for me to say. Yeah. Maybe I think I'm getting closer and closer to my gut as I still feel like my best work is ahead of me, which I when I talk to artists, I love how most of the people I talk to feel that way.
Yeah.
Where it really feels like I'm just getting better and better and better because I'm learning so much about myself. And I was never about doing something just for the quick fix as much as I was trying to endeavor to go to improve and get better. And I feel like I'm still learning so much and getting better. So in that regard, to me, I feel like I'm getting better and better because I'm learning more about myself.
I was talking to G-Buck the other day, and he said that he's about 10 years into the game right now, and he felt like just now he's just getting started.
Yeah,
And
totally.
Hearing that was like a little jolt of energy. It was so great.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. God, how many years am I in now? Like 15, probably, if you don't count that 2 years of whatever's gone on in the last 2 years.
Right.
I think I'm at 15.
It's been 3.5 years since you did the podcast the first time when we were in that hotel room in San Diego.
Yeah, my God. And I just had my first kid.
Well, what's coming up? Obviously you were talking about lots of new music. Is there any little sprinkles you want to get out there of, what people should look out for, or what the new music is like, or what future plans are? Anything you want to put out there?
I guess it's safe to say that I definitely have like 3 songs that I've got an EP that I'm finishing now, and I will roll out them as quickly as I can. And then there's another song that's basically finished that there's a vocalist on it who I really love. New music is coming in as soon as possible. I'd say the first single will be out at the end of January, and then another one like 4 to 6 weeks after that. I'm planning on touring America in the first quarter of next year. And from there, we will see what happens.
Yeah, just another rebalancing of a life just newly balanced, right?
Yeah, it's all about just trying to get my momentum going again, and finding my feet.
How is parenting and becoming a parent and all that? Because you were a new parent right when I talked to you last for this. Has it changed anything about your creativity? Has it changed the way you make music or think about music?
The thing that parenting has changed for me is that it's made me a lot more time poor, which has crystallized what's important to me and what is worth fussing over. It's also crystallized what I want, because I can't do anything unless I really want to, because I just can't find the time for it. That is a sort of superpower, because you can be completely flummoxed by directions to go in. Like someone like me with all the things that I love, I was a bit directionless because I could be, because I had the luxury of having the time to experiment and not having to commit to anything, not having people were pretty accepting of me doing that. And it was something that I really enjoyed doing. So I just kept doing it. I don't have the luxury of going in all different directions anymore. I have to apply my energy in a more cohesive way. And I think that's a really incredible thing to take on at this point in my life. I'm really grateful for parenthood for that, as it pertains to now I have 2 kids, but it's been since the pandemic that's happened.
Right.
So it's hard to know in what ways having 2 kids would have affected it if this all hadn't gone so pear-shaped.
Yeah, and I think that the road and all that.
Yeah, because with Willa, my first child, I essentially kept life basically the same. I just added her in, and I toured a little bit less, and I toured really dialed in. Like I would only do the East Coast on a Friday, West Coast on a Saturday, and then at the 6 a.m. flight home. So I had a really good, really strict tour layout and what I would and wouldn't do. And that was great. But I still kept touring every weekend pretty much, or like at least 2 or 3 weekends a month.
Right.
And I was more selective about what I said yes to, but I kept on saying yes. Now it's hard to say, like, comparing that life to this one because it's so different. But I think that the overall effect is that, yeah, you dial in.
Yeah.
You dial in real hard, real quick.
Yeah. I mean, it's
real
funny.
Fucking quick.
Isn't it funny though? The busier you get and the more things get added on, it's like the more efficient you get too.
Definitely.
In some ways, it's like, I'm sure you feel this way sometimes, where it's like, I'll impress myself sometimes when things get so busy where I'm like, oh, I thought I was having trouble getting these 5 things done, but actually I'm fine getting these 10 things done.
I know. And that's why I think I've become so efficient with my workflow, because I had to be. So I've just worked out a way around it, and now I like it actually because it's less emotionally taxing.
Right.
Done is better than perfect. get it done, move on, come back and see if you're happy with it. You might actually surprise yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to wrap up, I wanted to end with just some fun storytelling stuff, because I was thinking about, the podcast, your podcast. Obviously, we talked about you've been interviewing people you're forever, basically. You've been talking to people on the radio, doing interviews for your Apple show, FBI radio before that, which we talked about a lot the first time you were on the show. Do you have any early interview stories, either where something went wrong or you were very scared, or something, talking to some huge person where you didn't feel prepared at all? Is there a less composed Anna, the interviewer?
So many. And there's so many, they're so deep in my brain. Like I'm trying to access them right now. Like,
they're
oh
repressed.
my God.
Yeah.
They're deep in. Like they're just sort of like, it feels like 2 lifetimes ago. But very early on interviewed Kings of Leon, like the drummer of Kings of Leon, who I'd actually met before, but it was when they were really big, and I was a total indie band rat when I was younger.
Right.
And I was really excited. It was like their first album, maybe just on their second album tour, but I'd met them on the first album tour as well. And I went to the hotel and I interviewed him, and he's a tough cookie, but also I didn't record it. Just pressed the wrong buttons, was too nervous in the moment.
Oh man.
Then got back to the radio station because I had like this stupid little mini disc recorders, which was they were such little tricky little things. Anyway, but yeah, I didn't record it. And I was like,
record it at all.
Fuck. And also so nervous.
Nightmare.
Yeah, so nervous. And I've done that recently, but I just call the person back. Like there's been a few times. I think it was Odessa. I did it to Odessa, and I called them back and I was like, guys, what are you doing? Got 5? Because I need to redo that. Just didn't record. But now it's like, it's that same thing as when you first start DJing and you press the wrong CDJ and the music stops and you die. And then now when it stops, I just laugh and press it again. Like nothing happens, guys. The worst things happen and nothing actually happens. Like you can get through it all.
It's always
fine.
Yeah.
It's always fine. Life goes on.
I love that. Am I right? I've read in some old interview, did you do Snoop Dogg at some point too?
I supported Snoop Dogg. Yeah.
You supported him.
I supported Snoop Dogg. I've never interviewed Snoop Dogg. I don't think. No. But I supported him with Hoops, with Nina.
Oh yeah. It
was a pretty bogus gig even back in the day. It was like the launch of the casino, and we were just like, lol. And like definitely Snoop Dogg was like, lol.
You're right.
And
he was
it was just like, whatever. We were just all getting paid. And Leonardo DiCaprio was there that night, and he was in a cap in the corner.
Just hanging out.
Funny story. Last 2019, we went to Diplo's Grammy party, or Fisher's Grammy party, when Diplo and Fisher and stuff were nominated. Leonardo DiCaprio was there in a cap, and me and Nina saw him when we were walking through the crowd. And like, when you're walking through the crowd and then you become like face to face with someone.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, we're about to be face to face with Leo. And we're like, she's like pushing through the crowd, and I was like, say hi. And she goes, hi. And he just turns around and walks away. He was like, fuck fans, and just like went. So it all came full circle.
I like that it's like every 10 years you just intersect with Leonardo DiCaprio for a moment.
There's a few people like that. Another funny one that I keep intersecting with, or that I did for like in one sort of 6-year period, I intersected with Mick Jones from The Clash 3 times.
Oh, wow.
In 2 different countries, but like very weirdly.
Amazing. On the flip side of that, like on the legit side, you also did like a whole stint with The Weeknd, right?
Yeah, for 3 months, 2.5 months in a bus.
What was that like?
Yeah, it was really early on in my time in America. It's like a dream. Like it feels like a different lifetime ago, but it was really full on. And I was opening the show and playing in between him and Banks. So it was me, Banks, and The Weeknd. He was really like, we were playing big theaters.
Right.
So we also played the Greek in Berkeley. Is it the Greek?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Greek in Berkeley, the Greek in LA, like all these legendary venues. And that was like so extreme, you know, being backstage and seeing huge signed pictures of like every musical hero you've ever had when you're backstage at a venue is just like the history, the feeling of like walking the same path as someone that you have admired your whole life. That was very, very powerful on that tour. Being backstage and seeing like Outcast writing on the wall, you know, or like everyone. It was in a very, like, I play those clubs and stuff all the time, but dance music doesn't always have that kind of stamping of it. Like we've got it at Red Rocks, you know, you see it at Red Rocks, everyone goes to that room where everyone writes their name. But in a general club, because clubs change so quickly, we don't really have that sense of history. Right. So for my musical history, it was really like, wow, how is it possible that I'm in this room right now? So that was really beautiful part of it. Obviously, it's not my world. Like the Weeknd's world was a whole thing and like really cool to be a part of. I just felt like I was on for the ride and I got along great with him and his team and like definitely had lots of, like, we see each other now and they're so lovely. Like I saw them at Coachella. I saw Sal, his manager, and the Weeknd, he was with Selena Gomez at that time. And they're just like, Anna, come up to me. People are like, how do you know the Weeknd? It's weird because everyone in the VIP will be like kind of looking at them because they're so famous now. And then they'll just be like, hey. And I'm like, hey. So that's been really fun to like be a part of. Very much like lucky just to be on the bus, you know?
Yeah.
It was honestly just a lucky break. Like it was like being the right person in someone's mouth at the right time. That's all. It's not like I was particularly like working for that my whole life. It was like it was a cool thing to be a part of.
There's a beauty in that though, because those random moments that you wouldn't even think to chase that moment. You would never predict it, but then you stick around long enough and those moments do happen. And it's just, you know, what a cool, random, fun thing in your life and career. Yeah. It's still attributed to you. Like you earned it. You got there because of showing up and doing all this work that we've been talking about, but you can never predict where it's going to go. And sometimes those fun things happen. I think it's kind of beautiful.
It is beautiful. And that's the beauty in it because there's one thing's for certain. It doesn't happen if you don't do it. If you don't dare to risk it, it doesn't happen. But if you dare to risk it, then you can surprise yourself because like even moving to America was such a big like risk to throw away everything I had going on in Australia and be like, I'm just going to move. And I didn't have anything lined up. I just did it because I was just ready to risk it. And that's the sort of things that were able to come to me randomly just because I took that risk. I don't take any credit for that. That's just the world being fucking wonderful and weird. And like anyone listening, the world can be wonderful and weird for you. If you just never know, like you have no idea what is possible. That was never on the cards. If someone had told me that years before, I mean, it's like never going to happen.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah. I would have put money on it never happening. I would have put money on it. I would have put money on me never being the first woman to play EDC main stage.
Right.
Ever be. That was never my journey. That was never going to happen to me. And it's like, it did actually. Like, that's ridiculous.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think that, I don't know, I'm sure you get people talking about that inspired them, right? In a sense of maybe that wasn't your goal necessarily, but because you showed up and did the work, again, these cool results.
Yeah. And you know what, though? That's out of our control, that stuff. So I don't even like taking credit for it. I don't even like it. Claiming it because it's like I didn't control that. I didn't have any, like I did have something to do with it, but like it could have easily not happened to me. It could have happened to someone else and I wasn't in control of it and I don't like taking credit for it because I didn't do anything different to what I would have been doing anyway.
But that's just gratitude, I think, right? Like that's the right attitude. I mean, that's just saying I'm thankful for what's happened here and I worked pretty hard. And that's about all I can say, right?
Totally. And there's lots of things that I really wanted that I didn't get too.
Yeah, well, that's the other important part, right?
Yeah. And everyone is at the mercy of life just being random and weird. And sometimes it rolls in our favor and sometimes it rolls not in our favor. So you can't sort of get mad when it doesn't happen because you're like, well, it's like when you park, like for me, I always overstay my parking thing somehow.
Right.
And like when I don't get a ticket, it's not like I dance around and go like, yeah, I just go woo, and get in my car and drive away. And then when I do get a ticket, I'm like, they got me. Yeah. All right. It was my turn. Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay. So to wrap this into everything we've been talking about, I think that's the same thing for creativity and the same thing for writing music is we're not always in control of it. We're not always, even if you have made great songs in the past, the only way to ensure you can make great songs in the future is you just show up and be present for it and see what happens and keep showing up. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the only part of it we can control, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's all I'm trying to do is show up and finish the work and see what happens next. That's my plan.
It's the best
That's my life plan.
It's the only plan.
Guys, I've got a plan. Yeah. That's it.
Oh man, but honestly, it's the best plan. It's the only plan. It's the only one I will accept. It's
plan A, B, C, D, and E. That's it. 100%. The only plan I will accept. Oh shit.
Oh boy. Well, Anna, I love you. This has been really great. I'm going to let you go because I know you got a lot to do.
Oh, it's so nice to talk to you. And I'm so happy to be on the pod again. I can't believe it's been so long. And I still feel like we could have talked for another hour because
I would have loved to. My signature move that I've developed during the pandemic, which works even better over Zoom than it does in person, is just keeping the person way longer than they thought they were going to be there. but I don't do it to friends.
Yeah. I usually after an hour, I start to stop myself because I'm like, okay, it's been over. Like, no one's going to listen to this. Who wants to hear us go on for an hour? But like, it's so easy, like an hour like that. But congratulations for you to keeping it going so long. Like, wow, that's such a huge amount of work. Such a big commitment to make. And I'm sure the people listening are so thankful to you for it as well. And knowing what it's like to have a podcast, you don't always, sometimes it goes weeks without feedback and you don't really know if anyone's listening. Like people sending notes in saying, oh my God, I loved this episode. It made me really happy, or it made me really sad, or I felt something. Those notes are so important to feel motivated to keep going as well. So I hope that all the people listening are sending Willy lots of nice notes and saying, if an episode resonates with you, please give Willy a big high five and let him know, because it's a labor of love and it's something that he works really hard on.
Oh, well, that really means a lot. You just warm my heart, and I hope people realize the same thing about your podcast. And you better go listen. No, I'll do the whole intro. We'll link it up, all that. But I hope Anna, you're a huge inspiration to me always. Not just the radio, but the music, the creativity, the philosophy, all of it. The way you've done your whole career, huge inspiration. Very, very happy anytime we get to talk. And I hope we get to hang out in person once you're back in the States, whenever that happens.
We should do a live recording of something.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime.
We'll do a show or something where we just all sit around and gas bag. No DJing, just talking.
I'll text you after this. I have thoughts and ideas. Like I've thought about this before.
I think it would be great. If you think it would be great, hit us up and let us know.
Let's go.
Thanks, Willy.
Thank you, Anna. Much love to the family, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, me too. I hope we can do that. Big kiss.
All right. Have a good tour, by the way.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.